This is Michael Popok, and it's so dark you can almost see me, so it must be legal AF after dark. Speaking of dark, what is going on with Judge Aileen Cannon down in the Southern District of Florida in the Mar-a-Lago case? Not much, except she finds a lot of things interesting that almost every other federal judge, appellate court, and even the Supreme Court really doesn't find that interesting or relevant, which is, I wonder how the special counsel got appointed and if it was done properly under the law. And I wonder how he's being funded. I wonder if that's been done properly. I don't know. It's been done properly for the last 30 years. And every federal court that's approached it has basically said it is fine, but not to Judge Cannon. She's got an itch to scratch, and she's going to drag everybody, including the special counsel, into her courtroom on the 23rd of June to scratch it. This has suddenly gone from being a case about Donald Trump's criminality in Mar-a-Lago and Espionage Act violations and stealing National Defense Information documents and more about the purported wrongful conduct of the special counsel in the eyes of the judge. We break it all down right here on Legal AF. Take a listen. Let's move on to Atlanta. It's easy. Just as we suspected, I did a hot take on this one. The Georgia Court of Appeals, second highest appellate court in Georgia, has, without even having to be asked by Donald Trump, has decided the issue of whether Judge McAfee back in March properly ruled that Fani Willis should not be disqualified, although he had some pointed language in there against Fani Willis about her testimony and that of Nathan Wade. The odor of mendacity will go down in the annals of history about what he thought was some lying going on in the courtroom that he couldn't get to the bottom of, but kept her on the case after 4 days of excruciating detail that I would like to forget about Nathan Wade, about Fani Willis, about their relationship, about his sex life, about her sex life, and all things that have nothing to do with what we're here for the criminal justice is to decide whether Donald Trump is guilty or not of crimes along with 13 other people. But the judge realized that, especially having basically planted the seed for appeal within the order that he entered and certifying that appeal, that the court would get around to making a decision. Fani Willis, to her credit, I always faulted her a little bit, like she didn't push the issue about getting the case set for trial since March. We're already in June. She never moved. She never had a hearing. She never had a discussion about it. And there was no stay in place until now, but there is one now. And now the three-judge panel randomly selected, 3 judges not from Atlanta, and they're from a very conservative right-wing part of the state. And you can do your own math related to that. 3 men, 3 white men, have decided that they're going to stay the case, and they don't want any further proceedings going on, certainly not the setting of trial. So there's a pin in the case until they get around to deciding the issue. Now, they've set a October. They must be so busy there about things that matter to our democracy. They just can't get around deciding this case and having oral argument even until October. It doesn't mean actually that they're going to have oral argument in October. It's a control date on their calendar. They will decide as we get closer to October and after full briefing so there'll be 3 total briefs and a record brought up to them on appeal. They'll let the parties know in advance of October whether they're even going to have oral argument in October. But if they are, and it's likely they're going to, then sometime after that October date and at the end of the term, which happens to be March of 2025, they will enter their ruling. And in the meantime, the entire case is stayed. It's such a sad state of affairs. And we had so much hope and put so much of our eggs in Fani Willis's basket early on. I mean, she did everything right. And I'm not claiming she didn't do everything right, but she did everything right. You know, yes, Alvin Bragg broke the glass ceiling there, first to indict, first to prosecute, first to convict. I love that, especially given Alvin Bragg's having taken some unnecessary criticism and potshots at the very start of his being elected to that office. But Fani Willis, we were, oh my God, she's got him. She's got the goods. She's got the taped phone call. She's got the witnesses. She's got the fake electors cooperating. She's got, she flipped 4 and 3 of them being lawyers from Donald Trump and got theirs, whatever type of cooperation she got. This is a great case. And then this effing circus and soap opera, salacious going through the boudoir of Fani Willis. And some people I know are criticizing her. She brought this on herself. Why did she have to date Nathan Wade? And we've gone ad nauseum here in our positions about whatever she did at her off time is not relevant to her decision to prosecute. The indictment that was brought by a grand jury in Georgia, not Fani Willis, on the recommendations of a special purpose grand jury, not Fani Willis, based on evidence that was presented to them, and then who gets paid when and who has a drink with who after has nothing to do with the administration of justice. And that's where that is. But of course, to these 3 right-wing white guys, this is interesting. And why don't we do what Judge Cannon does and others do and the Supreme Court does, which is kick this can so far down the road that you don't even know what road you're on. And then we'll pick up with it when it really doesn't matter any longer after the election. And if Donald Trump were to win, this case will be inevitably delayed until he's out of office and 88 years old. If he loses, then we'll have to see what happens, whether Fani Willis is still around after these inevitable appeals. I know you have very strong opinions about the original motion to disqualify and how Judge McAfee handled it and then invited this appeal. And so where are you at with all this, Karen?
I mean, yeah, exactly. We're in this was much ado about nothing from the beginning. And this is just a racist, misogynistic double standard that they're applying to Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, who are 2 consenting adults who are people who are, he was a judge, she's an elected prosecutor. And I mean, it was not like there was no conflict at all. And they just went after her. And Judge McAfee, who I actually really like and think he is a really good judge, I think didn't know what to do with it. And he just let it go. He could have, he had the circus of a hearing where there was almost nothing about what the conflict would be and all about the salacious sex details just to embarrass them. It just had nothing to do with whether or not there was an actual conflict of interest here. Again, they were on the same side of the aisle. There was no prosecutor sleeping with the judge or sleeping with the defense attorney kind of thing. And so therefore there was, some kind of conflict. This is colleagues. And I met my husband in the DA's office. He was 2 years senior to me, but whatever. Now we're married. Like, it happens. And this was a consensual relationship. This was not like a boss and her underling, right? This was, whatever. Anyway, it just frustrates me because the hearing, which I went down a rabbit hole and lost several days of my professional life because I didn't stop watching it because it's televised, partly because I just couldn't believe it was happening the way it was. I just can't believe how much Judge McAfee lost control of that hearing. Like I said, if he needed to have a hearing, I don't think he could have or should have. I don't think there was a conflict at all. But okay, you want to have a hearing to establish that? Focus it on what could cause a conflict, right? What went into the hiring decisions of Nathan Wade? Is he qualified? And again, how about who decided when to pay him? How did you audit his hours? All the kind of things that could maybe perhaps look like a conflict. Or at least somehow develop that record was never developed. They never even talked anything that was remotely about a financial conflict. And I can't imagine what other type of conflict there would be there. But he let that crazy record get made. And then he said, oh, well, there's an appearance of impropriety. I'm not really sure what that is, what the appearance is. Spell it out. He never spelled it out. What is the impropriety? What is the appearance of it? I just don't get it. And it's just, they don't like that there are people having sex and, it's a woman and they're Black, God forbid, these white guys, like I swear to God, this just stinks and reeks of racism and misogyny to high heaven. It really does to me. And here we are. So it's the South, it's the deep South. And now this case isn't going ever. I mean, I'd be shocked if this case ever goes to trial. Either Donald Trump wins the election and it doesn't go. Also, the presidential immunity decision that we're waiting on from the Supreme Court, that's going to impact the conduct here, of course, too, because whatever standard applies there is going to have to apply here too. So that's going to impact it. And I'm sure if either way, whether he wins or loses, the Georgia governor is potentially going to pardon him. I mean, I know it's not completely up to the governor in Georgia. I know that.
Well, it's not up to the governor at all. It's up to a panel.
Right. But those types of panels are political, and there are people like governors have influence, and you never know. You just never know. They'll either feel sorry for him because he lost the election, he's been punished, or he's been hurt enough, or he won, and so we can't do it. The one other open question is going to be what happens to the rest of the 14 defendants who will be left. Some have pled guilty, only a few. And what will happen to those cases, right? What will happen to the guys who've already pled guilty, and what will happen to the other open cases? This impacts all of them, not just Trump. So this case is dead. Don't ever expect this case to go, at least against Donald Trump, in my opinion.
Yeah. I want to just take a look at something about the Board of Pardons and Paroles in Georgia. One of the reasons that, just so people know, that most governors are able to do what Karen outlined, which is to pardon. Like, there's been pressure on Governor Hochul here in New York to, including by some Democrats, which was bizarre, to pardon Trump for the good of the country. Not happening. But in other states that have had frequent corruption at the governor level, they've taken away the right of the governor to do that, because Georgia had some corruption issues where people were paid bribes and governors were paid bribes. And for people to think that stuff doesn't happen, it's not directly at the intersection of law and politics, but there is a federal case that's going on right now that while the jury was deliberating, a federal case about the misuse of COVID funds to the tune of $30, $40, $50 million. One of the jurors got delivered in a gift bag to her home $150,000 in cash with a note that said, "There's more where that comes from if you vote to acquit." This is not a John Grisham novel, although it sounds like it. It just happened in federal court. Somebody thought it was appropriate. And, you got to think, I'm thinking when Trump heard that, like, is that a thing? Could I have done that? And no, it's not a thing. And that now they're talking about dismissing the jury and starting all over again and looking into the crimes that were committed and trying to influence and tamper with the jury by flashing cash. But there's been that historically, organized crime trying to. We've had the murder of jurors in this country. So when we talk about doing your civic duty, it's not without risk, which is why we're so hot and bothered on this Legal AF and on MeidasTouch about the protection of the criminal justice system and jurors and all of that, and prosecutors like Fani Willis from being pilloried and excoriated and crucified by what ends up being right-wing MAGA, and therefore delaying what everybody of every stripe and every political leaning should want, which is a public justice system that tries our people, regardless of what their political position was or what their presidential position was, but tries them in public so that we know whether they are guilty or innocent, and we know that information before we have to pull the lever for them on voting. But that doesn't seem to matter anymore in Georgia, so we're going to have to continue to follow. Welcome back. Wednesdays, I do the show with Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. On Saturdays, I do Legal AF with the co-founder, along with me, Michael Popok, Ben Celis. We curate the top 4 or 5 stories at the intersection of law and politics. We bring it to you like no other show on YouTube in the world. I'm really blowing smoke and sunshine now. It's called Legal AF for a reason. Join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and you'll find out why. And then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. If you know about Legal AF, you already like the show. Maybe you'll just listen to that. You missed that particular segment, or send it off to friends and family and people in your life and ask them to join our ride. I almost said crusade. Our ride and our following, and join our audience. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that was Legal AF, and we invite you to join our show. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.